Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of TechTalk Dudes. Today, myself and Pim are talking about an interesting topic, and we are talking about how we can protect our ground jewels, actually protecting our data. And we have so many tools in our toolbox to achieve that. And Pim prepared some cool stuff, some cool demos, how we can achieve that by using conditional access based on the E3, but it has some, well, I would say some limitations. And Pim will also to show us how we can extend these capabilities with the use of an E5 license based on Defender for Cloud Apps. So Pim, how are you doing today?
Are you
doing
great? Yeah, I'm doing great. Yeah? Thanks for the swift introduction again, of course. Yeah, well, indeed, today we want to show you a bit more about what conditional access can do for you in combination with other Microsoft products within the Microsoft Cloud as well to protect your data. So I think that everyone who's listening, at least I hope so, is aware of the conditional access features, whereby we can say we require MFA, we need a compliant device to access data, and or you need an app protection policy on your mobile. There are a lot of settings and grant settings or block settings we can make today from conditional access, which is good, and which I see that more and more organizations are starting to use them. There is only one thing which organizations look less on, and that's browser-based access. So we can easily protect with conditional access in combination with Endpoint Manager and a device state like a compliant device. That a compliant device is trusted, and we allow that device to synchronize that data and access the data which is on the Microsoft platform. However, when in that case, when people work from home and leave their computer on the office and start to work from their personal device, they can still go to the browser, can download all the data from there, are able to copy and paste data out of Word docs into onto their personal PC, and that's something I want to look into with you all today. What I've done, I've prepared a few bits and bytes in sort of a demo. So what I will do is I will share the screen.
So actually, what you're saying is, Pim, we are working from home. We are able to collaborate using personal devices. But actually, the challenge here is that's great, but how keep I control on my data, on my organizational information, and making sure that it is not being leaked or whatsoever. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So those are my conditional access policies, and it's a test tenant. So we're only going to look at these two. So the app enforced restrictions today and the cloud Defender for Cloud Apps app control rule. And what I first want to start with is an E3 functionality, which is called app enforced restrictions. It's this one. This is the policy I created, which I assigned to my test user account, Johnny Bravo. I've assigned it to the Office 365 cloud application. I put it onto any device, any location for browser-based access, because the other ones are protected via compliancy rules should be protected with compliancy rules in that case, so that you can only use a mobile app or ActiveSync or another client when the device is compliant. So we're only looking now at browser-based access, except for devices which are compliant, because compliant devices, we don't want them to hit this particular rule. Important to know, and this is an important thing to mention. Previously, there was a feature in here called device state. That's a deprecated feature. If you use that in your tenant, please get rid of it and replace it for filter for devices, because that's the way to go. Device states will go in the end.
Hey, Pim, you mentioned you're excluding the compliant devices. That's with a reason. It's because if you are compliant, then it implies that you have a managed device, and thus you have full control of those devices.
Yeah, correct. So those devices are already able in the most normal scenario to synchronize data, so it doesn't really matter to protect the browser if they're already able to use the OneDrive client to synchronize data.
Yeah, and you mentioned also this is only applying to the session-based, so it's actually the web-based web client. And with the other option you showed us, that's also implies for mobile platforms with app protection capable applications like the native apps on your iOS or Android. That's also where we have the control of the app and thus also have the control on the data within the app without the need of managing those devices.
Correct. Yeah, correct. So yeah, indeed, that's a different option. So within the ground controls, you indeed would be able, as we just talked about compliant devices, you also got approved client apps for iOS and Android. And on those approved client apps or apps which you are able to protect with a man policy from Endpoint Manager, you can already do that restrict, cut, copy, and paste option from the app itself. So it's particularly browser because apps can be managed in a different way. That's basically what we're saying.
Yeah, exactly, and that's actually what I try to emphasize. What the use case here we have, whether it's web-based working from an internet cafe or, as you mentioned, with a personal device. It's web-based, and you're taking with is how you can protect the data in that particular use case.
Yeah, exactly. So to come back to my explanation, we've set those 4 conditions. For the grant controls, we just grant access. MFA and other kind of requirements can be set in different policy. This is just a grant policy, whereby we then say use app enforced restrictions. This is a simple checkbox. It's included in the E3. So if you're using EMS E3 or M365 E3, this is something you would be able to configure on your own. And then it requires different configurations for, in this example, SharePoint. You can also do this for Exchange, but in this example, we will just do SharePoint. Whereby you need to go to the SharePoint Admin Center. You can go to Access Control. You go to Unmanaged Devices, and in here you would say allow limited web-only access. That's something you should save. And once that's saved, and once we're going to test this functionality, you would see that only compliant devices now are able to download data from, in this case, SharePoint or OneDrive. Only once they hit this rule. So if we have guest accounts, which are not included in this rule, don't worry, they can still download the data. If that's something you want, because that's something you need to think about.
Yeah, that's a good one, because if you want to prohibit it downloading from your own users, but allowing it for your end users or your guest users, at some point it doesn't make sense to me, but could be me. But okay,
yeah,
let's move on.
It's good. It's a good one for a next session, but not for now. Once you then go to OneDrive, in this case I already opened it, it basically says your organization doesn't allow you to download, print, or sync using this device. And that means already the policy, the app enforced restriction policy, did kick in. And we are just able to open the device, we can preview it, we can share, we can copy the link, we can do lots of stuff. I can't do delete because I simply have the rights over my OneDrive, of course. But I'm not able to grab this document out of the this particular tenant and put it onto my device, because the device which I'm working on right now is not managed within this tenant. What I can do, however, is open the document and I can say test 1, 2, 3, whereby, as you can see, the document is simply saving and it's saved. So I can still work online in this document. So I can only do the stuff web-based in this case. I can, however, with app enforced restrictions, important to mention, just copy the whole contents of the document and put it into a document which is stored on my personal computer. So I don't download the document, put it onto my computer. No, I could just copy the contents. So if you want to block that one, because that's not part of an E3 functionality, for that, you do need Defender for Cloud Apps. And that brings us actually to the next rule. Where is the policy? So this was the app enforced restrictions policy. And the second policy we created was for Defender for Cloud Apps. Now, app enforced restrictions is quite basic. It provides basic security. It's not wrong to apply it, but it doesn't cover the full stack, as you are probably used to when you're using E3, comparing E3 versus E5 functionality, because E5 just covers way more than E3. Now, in this conditional access policy, we included again my user. We put it again to the Office 365 apps. Again, the same configuration. So any device, any location, only for browser, and we excluded compliant devices because again, those devices are able to synchronize the data. The policy is not that different, apart from the fact that we didn't say we use app enforced restrictions. No, in this case example, we said we use Conditional Access App Control, whereby you can say, I would do it on a monitor only, and monitor only simply means the data is gathered, audits are gathered within Cloud App Security, whereby you can see what will happen if I would apply it. I can say block downloads, which basically does the same as app enforced restrictions. In this example, I would been able to use the block downloads preview option. However, I wanted to show you the differences between E3 and E5, hence the reason why I used app enforced restrictions up front. But more important, we can use a custom policy. So in this case, I set this policy to use a custom policy, and the custom policy can be created again from Defender for Cloud Apps. Now, what is important within Defender for Cloud Apps is, first of all, that your Office 365 app and Microsoft Azure is connected. Once that app is connected, it gathers data, and then over time, because it takes a bit of time before the reporting kicks in, you can see that apps are coming into the Conditional Access App Controlled apps. If nothing is in here, then you wouldn't be able to set a policy. So it's important that the apps which you want to protect are in here. Based on the apps which I've used today, as you can see that the available controls are Azure AD Conditional Access Session Control. And that means we are able to put we are able to use conditional access like I configured it within conditional access on those particular apps. Now, way more apps than just this are supported, but those are the ones I just used today. So not everything is yet in here.
Yeah, so these are session-based applications, web-based. And one thing to mention, Pim, you must have connected the application prior. Otherwise, the applications which might be subject to Conditional Access App Control won't pop up here. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you must have connected them and you must have used them, and then they pop up in here. Indeed, correct. Now, once that's done, once that basic configuration is done, it's important to go to policies, go to conditional access, and from here you can create a policy. And we're going to do a session policy right now because we want to do something within session-based related. That's also why it says here session on conditional access. So we're creating a session policy. I've already created one. I just go to show you the example, whereby there are a few templates which you can use. You can say I do a block upload, block download, block cut, copy, paste on real-time inspection. Now in this example, I've used the policy template. It provides a warning that it's going to fill all the details. So if you have ever typed in the description and policy name and then decide to use the template, all those values gets overwritten. So that's important just to mention. It provides a policy name. You would be able to apply a policy severity on it. You can put a category on it, a description. You can say the session control type is block. You can also say I will start just with monitor only, of course, so that you can see what eventually will happen if you enable this. You can say the activity type equals cut, copy, paste item. Device tag does not equal, and this one is important, of course, whereby we just want to have an Intune compliant device, or eventually, up to you to decide, of course, if you have hybrid Azure AD joint devices, if you want to have them as well. Think about maybe Azure Virtual Desktop, which is still in use within your organization and hasn't been joined yet to Intune. Then maybe this checkbox gets helpful for you. So we exclude Intune compliant and hybrid Azure AD joint devices from this rule, same as we do from the conditional access policy. Now, then we can say we configure content inspection, whereby we include text that matches a custom expression or has an exact match, or a preset expression. This is something I don't want. I just want to regularly block, cut, copy, and paste items. Then we have test, so monitor login activities or block. Now, what I want to do is block, and what I want to do as well is at least provide the user with an instruction why this is blocked. So I want to put in, dear user, this action is blocked because you don't use a managed device. Yeah. Put something in there which is applicable for your organization, and eventually guide them to the IT support desk. Now, always apply the selected action even if data cannot be scanned, because otherwise we maybe still have data leaks. And you can say create an alert for eventually the security department, so that you can see if if people are using this functionality. And I was stumbled how much data is copied by cut, copy, and paste in production environments, whereby an alert was created. So be aware that if you enable this policy, inform your security department as well, because in some examples you can be thrown with a lot of alerts. So it's something up to you to decide.
It seems to be you can adjust the thresholds of those alerts. So
yeah, exactly. It's for a reason.
Yeah.
So you then hit create. Now that's something I won't do because I've already got that one in here. That's this one, and you can see that I've configured it with the user as you're using the managed device, etc., and I put the daily alert limit policy 2000. Now that's basically what I've done in my test environment. Now, if I now go back to the user session, because my Johnny Bravo user is matching that particular conditional access policy and Defender for Cloud App conditional access policy, I'm not able to do a copy of this data, because Defender for Cloud Apps now interferes with my session. As you also can see within the URL that it's proxying my request through MCAS, or Defender for Cloud Apps, as it's MCAS is of course the previous name, and it provides me with the message I just thrown in there, and I'm not able to copy the data out of my managed content. My crown jewels are now not only protected by preventing them from being downloaded from OneDrive or SharePoint, but also the content within those files is protected, so that I cannot grab just content out of those files.
Yeah. This is great. So you are actually going to a next step by not only preventing from downloading it or syncing it, but also the copy paste action.
Exactly. It's way more advanced than just conditional access. That's why Defender for Cloud Apps and the combination with conditional access is way strong. That combination makes it very strong. Just within E3 you can do the basic stuff, and that's not wrong at all. But eventually, I think everyone needs E5 in the end.
Yeah. This is only from a web-based way of working. So if we're talking about the native experience and editing your Office documents by PowerPoint or Excel or Word, then this functionality is not available yet, right?
Is a very good question, Ronnie. And you're putting me on the stand here.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the exact answer for you right now.
It's fine. It's just to make sure that this is a very good scenario where the app control enforces you to employees or your seasonal workers to work it web-based. So you can facilitate them on a web-based way of working.
Yeah.
But the native experience, it's a kind of a balance we are now making.
And what I like to do, of what I most likely try to advise, you can work with PowerPoint on your machine, Word, Excel, etc. But then the device needs to be managed and needs to be compliant. If it's not compliant, then you can still work web-based, and then this is your experience. That should be the goal, because then I'm not able to synchronize the data anymore, and I can just use the web equivalent to still work, only with limited functionality, because maybe that device hasn't been encrypted, so I don't want my data to end up on a device which isn't encrypted and can be, for example, left in the train.
Yeah, but that's good. And also what you mentioned, you can customize the notification. So if you have a brief explanation, then the end user will also understand why it's prohibited to do so. And I think that makes sense.
Yeah. So this is important, and just something as well, because I bumped my head on that several times. What is important as well is to configure the general setting of user monitoring within Defender for Cloud tabs. Because if you leave this enabled, people will always receive a message that their activity is being monitored. It depends a bit on your user state. If that maybe rings a lot of alarm bells which you don't want to ring, or maybe you want to do it on purpose, but then that's up to you. And again, that message can again be customized as well, as you can see.
Yeah, but that might raise questions from your end users, and that might be something subject to the work council, and so it's this what we're now covering, and that's actually the use case. I think it's clear. We're covering how you can facilitate your employees being productive even on unmanaged devices while keeping your data secure. But from the other end, this is also when you are implementing in or willing to implement or planning to implement, take into account that from a privacy or from your work council perspective, this is something we more or less should be covered as well.
Yeah, correct. Totally correct. You're 100% right.
Yeah, well, Pim, this is awesome, I would say. And I think this is definitely useful for a lot of people, a lot of folks which are listening today. And with that, well, many thanks for your good explanation. It was crystal clear to me the difference between E3 and E5, what's possible in the E3, and what we need to go to the next line, to the next level with the E5. Well, awesome.
Totally agree. There is much more which you can configure in Defender for Cloud tabs, but that's for a different time.
That's for next episode, I would say.
For next session.
Hey, everyone, thank you very much for listening this episode. And Pim and myself looking forward to have you on the next one. Stay safe and stay tuned.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.